I'm going to record it here so everybody gets that alert. All right. Yes. So this is how we do it. All right. So we've got a small number coming in currently, but we will certainly add on to this. Obviously, the replay is probably what most people are going to catch anyway. So, Anthony, Matt, glad to have you here. This is going to be fun. It was an interesting experience with Prosper. So, I am definitely looking forward to talking about some of the things that we learned, some of the conversations that we've had. Certainly, some of the side conversations that were not public knowledge. Those I think had a big high value, but just kind of the general feel and sense of the Prosper for those of you who are there or even not there. This is a great opportunity to kind of listen in on some of the conversations that we might have had. Overall, I would say, I mean, as far as Canopy Management goes, as far as our agency, we had a really good show. Now, I think part of this, based off a lot of the comments that we were getting back, a lot of what I heard was based off the fact that Canopy is just really the reputation that we've hit in the last year alone has really kind of set us apart, once again, from some of the other agencies and software. So essentially, because of our ability to level up as an organization, that reputation is filtering down based off of our track record with our clients. And so I was really glad to see that pay off when it came to the amount of people who sought us out on the list of vendors at Prosper 2021 to come in and say, let's have a conversation. And I know, Matt, you were frontline on that. You had probably at least 100 conversations. I mean,
I think between Blake and I, we counted about 225 conversations with either sellers or other service providers.
Yeah, and that is fantastic, and that really kind of goes to show. And this is not a chest beating thing about like how awesome we are. I think I was impressed by not only our team that went to Canopy, the larger agency team that supported us while we were at Prosper, and just the fact that our reputation got there before we did, which I think is awesome, because I mean, that really, I mean, obviously that's what we're working for. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we burn, we work 24/7, it seems like some days, some weeks, we work that hard in order to get the results that we do, in order to create the reputation that we have, in order for that whole sales cycle and marketing to continue to loop back around and work. To actually see that work, that's cool. It is really cool.
Yeah.
Let's talk less about Canopy. I know we've got, I think we've got a slide in there saying like, hey, if you want to contact us, and that's cool and everything for those of you who joined us. We still have people rolling in, so I do want to get started on the topic. I would love to try to keep this to a tight 1 hour. Think we can do that?
Even we can try.
Right? All right. So that means that we need to get we're gonna go through some topics and have some discussion. Those of you who are listening in, who are watching here, what I want you to do is, first of all, tell me in the chat, give me some participation here. Let me know that you're actually here, you're participating, you actually want to be here. Tell me, as far as, yes or no, did you go to Prosper? And 2, what city are you in? Just kind of give us some feedback so we know who we're talking to. We certainly have seen, and that's something that we see from year to year. I know I see from year to year is in different regions of the world, you get more participation. That is kind of advanced knowledge of what marketplaces in Amazon are developing, right? And where your competition is coming from, right? And so, okay, so no. Okay, so quite a few no's here as far as attendance goes. And that's obviously why you're here, right? Because if you were there, then you'd already know what you got out of it.
I don't know. I feel like the people that were there are probably going to turn around and watch the replay because they're going to realize that they missed out on, you can't be at every conversation. You can't be in every session.
No, that is absolutely true. That is absolutely true. And that's part of what we're going to cover. So, all right, so let me get through some more of these. All right, so Dan, Jason, the Philippines, Palo Alto, out of Canada. Yeah, we saw that. That's one of the things we certainly saw. Okay, so as far as those who attended, one of the things that we saw quite a bit were international, even, you know, even as close as Canada is, some of you were not able to get across the border. Some of you couldn't get the visa to come in. We certainly saw that with some of our European vendors and partners that were not able to come over to the States because they simply just couldn't get approved for the visa. And that's in part quarantine, that's in part just bad efficiency of international approvals, all that kind of stuff, right? Let's see here. Abigail's coming out of Spain. Where in Spain are you at? My wife literally wants us to move to Barcelona. So that actually may happen in the next few years. We'll see. So right. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen. Do you guys have any other opening comments before we really kind of get into some meat here?
No, I'm ready.
Okay. Hold on.
Granada, Spain is where Abigail's from.
Granada. I'm ignorant enough to know that I don't know where that is.
It's in Spain.
You're bad. All right, let's get this presenting here. There we go. Okay, let me know if you can see a full slide here. What happened in Vegas will not stay in Vegas.
Got it.
Okay, that includes COVID. Side comments.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's kind of a common question, you know, that I've been hearing too, is like, well, you know, do a lot of people get sick? It's like, no, actually, I mean, I know, I think maybe 4 people total out of 1,700 plus attendees. I've only heard of 4 instances. And a mix, surprisingly, you know, I was expecting it to be more, you know, non-vaccinated, but it was like 50-50 basically. You know, and most of us should know is that the vaccine doesn't prevent you from getting sick. It just keeps you, it just helps you stay out of the hospital from being seriously sick. So that's obviously a debatable topic. It's not part of this, but let's kind of jump in here, of course. And I always like how Anthony's like, he goes, I want to say something, but I'm going to bite my tongue. All right. So what we're talking about, of course, is Prosper Show 2021. This is probably the first major Amazon seller event that really that kind of broke out post-COVID, right? It quasi post-COVID, if you will. This was put on by a trade show marketer. This year was not done. It was not managed by buy box experts that some of you are already familiar with. James Thompson and his team over at buy box experts no longer run the Prosper Show. They had a couple of advisors, but it's still up to the show to actually listen to those advisors and put in place what they actually said they were going to do, which we didn't see as well as we thought. You know, we thought that it could have been done better, but that tends to happen among shows that are put on by organizations that are primarily booth marketers, booth sales, as opposed to passionate participants of a community. And so that's kind of where I think that some more of the smaller regional shows will probably be more impactful, especially those that are in your area. You're going to get more attendance. Some of those dwindled pre-COVID. Some of those conferences dwindled quite a bit. I would think that we're going to see a resurgence of some of the regional ones. But I can tell you is that it was emotionally and, you know, I guess both emotionally and logically for me, Prosper was awesome for me. And I'm not I don't normally go to have a booth, or, you know, I'm usually, maybe Anthony and I are speaking at a conference, but This year was interesting because I think it's you've got that post-COVID where people are coming back. It's like, oh my gosh, I've known you for years, and it's the first time actually meeting you in person. That's one of the biggest advantages of going to a conference like this, is actually having those person-to-person conversations, not sitting in the crowd listening to a topic that you could probably hear better advice from a YouTube channel, right? Or a course or something like that. It's mostly to really network with people, really get to know people, start developing partnerships, start developing collaborations, get into masterminds and large or small masterminds. Those are the things that typically you're going to want to get out of there. Now, Anthony did an awesome job as far as outlining some of the things that his views of. You basically wrote an article. It's up on the Canopy Management site, right? I don't know if they can get, Anthony, if they can get to that blog article directly from the homepage of canopymanagement.com.
Yeah, it's under blog, but I'll put it in the chat too.
Okay, cool, awesome. Appreciate that, because that is an awesome write up about some of the lessons learned. We'll talk about a number of those things, but I think that the way that you put that together, Anthony, awesome job. So I think that's kind of a great supplement to what we're doing today. Let me kind of jump in and do some quick introductions here. First of all, this whole this live workshop, this 1 hour with you, it is sponsored, of course, by Canopy Management, if you haven't picked up on that already. Part of what you see on the left hand side is one of the reasons why we had a great success of people seeking our booth out and wanting to have a conversation with Canopy Management, because they were typically brands who were trying to level to go to a whole new level. I was actually kind of surprised, and Matt, you can probably speak to this more because you're essentially chained to the booth most of the time, but you had a lot of these conversations as far as perception. And I think one of the things that I was hearing was how many brands that we talked to that thought they had already maxed out what they could do on Amazon from a sales and marketing and profitability. And we basically came back and said, it's like, yeah, you're not there yet. You've got you got 2 more levels you could go. And they're like, well, it's like, no, that's not possible. And unfortunately, and that's kind of one of the reasons why we've got these kind of metrics on the left-hand side, is because we're in the business of making category kings and queens, right? That's some of the shirts that we were making. Actually, it's on this slide. Category king and queen is essentially basically saying, like, look, you should be the dominant force in your product niche. If you're not, you have not arrived yet. You have not set your brand up and your products up for the best possible. If you plan on doing an exit at some point, that you are the juiciest brand and juiciest products to get the highest valuation, to get the biggest benefit to you, to get the highest offer, highest multiple offers. You should be talking to multiple, aggregators or, investors, if that's the path you're going down. I'm not going to get into that piece of the discussion. It's more of a case of there's typically a lot more that you can do in the next 12 months to really set yourself for an entirely higher level of performance and I'm going to make up a word here, juiceability to aggregators. That was bad. Admittedly, that I sucked on that one. That was pretty bad. But yeah, so this whole thing is actually, we do advertising and marketing for Amazon brands. We also have ventured into Walmart this year. That's the extent of my pitch. If you want to have a conversation and just see what we've got going on, whether or not there's a good fit between Canopy Management and your brand, if you want to level up, if you want to get some of these results that we're talking about on the left-hand side of the slide here, then reach out to us at canopymanagement.com. You're already going to go out there in order to see Anthony's, text write-up, the blog article on Prosper to supplement what we're talking about here today. So might as well get a conversation going and just see, we're not a hard pitch organization. We are, look, this is what you're doing correctly. This is what you're screwing up. If you want us to do it for you, awesome. We can have that discussion. If not, take the advice and run. That's how we work. All right. So for those of you who have never heard of me, it's a pleasure to meet each of you. There's some of this stuff was not written by me, and so I don't want to pound my own chest on this. Look, I've been in this space a long time. I've done my 10,000 hours, right? I've been in e-commerce for about 14 years. I've been in the Amazon space for over 6 years, six and a half years, I think. I brought to the community things like the first, ad management software, the first, professional training course in advertising. And of course, when people kept on asking us to do the work for them, that's when we introduced about 3.5 years ago, Canopy Management, our advertising agency. We've done well over $1 billion in managed revenue. And so the point of this is we've had our share of failures, successes, and our track record in the last year speaks for itself. And so I'm extremely proud of what our agency team has gotten to at this point and the results that we're pulling together. That's where I'll leave it at that. Anthony Lee, many of you are already familiar with Anthony Lee. Anthony Lee has also been an OG in the, I'm not a big fan of the word OG. He's it's the original gangster, right? I think as far as OG, right? I'm enough of a geek that I want to just say, look, Anthony has put in his 10,000 hours also to get expertise. He started out, of course, in Amazon space well over 6 years ago. You may have known him back from the Zonblast days. He had a stint before we stole him away with both Helium 10 and Signalytics. And of course, he has always been active, an outspoken proponent of the Amazon community, and not shy when it comes to basically calling people out on their bullshit. So I'm willing to say that, out loud here, because he does, like each of us, he consults to 6, 7, 8, 9-figure brands. So definitely a thought leadership. If you're not already following him, I think you usually lead with LinkedIn, if I'm not mistaken, Anthony.
Any
social media everywhere. Actually, he's even on TikTok, and so he's actually got a massive following on TikTok too. So wherever you are on social media, chances are Anthony is the one that you should be following when it comes to thought leadership in the Amazon space. So I am extremely proud that you are on our team. You did a fantastic job for us so far, and I look forward to working with you in the years come. And glad to have you here today with me. Now, the next guy needs no introduction. No, actually, Matt Atkins. So Matt Atkins is part of our agency sales and marketing team. And he is just a beast when it comes to, usually you can find him on Clubhouse. He's usually one of the guest speakers on Clubhouse and discussions like this, because he's very much in the trenches. He runs his own brand. He also does consulting. He advises brands as far as where they're at right now and where they should be, really what they could be getting up to if they really, really committed the next year to their brand and growing their brand, right? So like any of us who really understand Amazon well, we've each gotten our ass handed to us in some way or another over the years, right? You don't become a true expert in the space until you've made significant mistakes and you've learned how to correct those. We've made enough over the years that we're extremely confident. It's like we've pretty much have seen it all. Somebody's always going to come in with something that's like, okay, I haven't actually seen that, but it's pretty rare anymore. And so nothing really throws us off, right? So Matt, I'm really glad to have you here. You were obviously an operating force. For any of you who got a chance to meet Matt at Prosper, then count yourself as lucky, because he obviously was just, you were constantly talking with somebody. It was hard to get any time with you. So
it was.
All right, let's kind of shift gears a little bit. Anthony, I'm going to take a breath here. If you want to kind of recap as far as some of the things that we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely. I love this catchy title. What happened in Vegas will not stay in Vegas. So what we're going to talk about, basically 3 different areas. Observation. So this is just the stuff that, we saw on the trade show floor, but also like in the sessions, and basically what we observed from Prosper. The conversations is probably the most interesting part that a lot of people want to know, because, this is the stuff that we had conversations with our friends. We have colleagues that we've known for years in this space, and we talk to them about, what's next for them and what they're seeing is working, is not working. It's a very, very cool time. And that's one of the biggest things that I think is great about these in-person events. And then the sessions, right? So I tried to go to as many of the sessions as possible. I put down as detailed notes as I could in a quick blog post, but I want to really dive into a couple of those things today because I think it's valuable stuff, right? A lot of people that I talked to at Prosper was like, number one reason I'm here is for networking. And I get it. That's awesome. But I will say, yeah, well, a lot of people probably didn't sleep, but I will say that outside of networking, you actually pick up, like I always go to the sessions, even if it's a topic that I feel like I've heard about before, because you never know the nugget you're going to pick up. And I picked up probably 3, just stuff that maybe I did know 2 years ago that I forgot. I mean, there's a lot of information. So anyway, that's what we're going to go over today.
Awesome. Sounds good. I know that I was having a conversation earlier today that was talking about how, the reason that you go to conferences, the same kind of logic should be applied to college as well. I've got an 18-year-old son that's going off to college this fall here. And the 2 things that I was trying to teach him is not like, what are you going to get out of your classes? It's what's going to be how are you going to network? How are you going to, increase the number of people that you know at the college? And then also, what critical thinking skills can you learn? Because the college is probably not going to teach you. They're also not teaching networking, which I think is both of those absolutely need to be part of both operating in the Amazon space as well as college. So
I almost feel like we could do a whole webinar on effective networking. And this is coming from like a tried and true. I have taken every personality test under the sun. I'm an introvert, and I feel like I've mastered a certain way to network, which is probably very different from somebody like Matt. I don't know if that's of interest to anybody. I almost feel like we could totally touch that topic. Not today though.
No, definitely not. No, I would absolutely like that as well, because I know that I came from where you couldn't peel me off a wall to talk to somebody, I mean, and I had to force myself. And so don't ever think that it's like, oh, well, you can do it, but I can't. It's like, no, it's a learned skill. It's not something you're just born with. All right. So jumping in here. So some of the things that we want to kind of point out. There's both things that were included at Prosper that we observed. It's like, wow, we're hearing a lot of this, and there's also things that were oddly missing in some cases. And so we'll kind of talk about some of those as far as what was noticeable that was missed, as well as those things that were commonly talked about. Aggregators, you'll probably hear quite a bit, is the aggregators were those companies that have pulled in investor dollars and are acquiring brands, Amazon brands, so they can repackage them and sell them for 5 times more than what they paid you. That's the business model that they are in. That was certainly the dominant force in Prosper Show 2021. They had the bigger boost. They tended to sponsor some of the breakout parties. They were obviously trying to get in front of as many established and growing brands as they could, right?
There was one giving away Teslas, right, Brian?
Yeah, one of them was, they were claiming, it's like, oh yeah, I don't know, you could win a Tesla. Really what it came down to is that if we fully close on an acquisition deal, then we'll cut you a referral check, basically. So they were they were being a little gimmicky on that one.
Yeah. I mean, gimmicky as that might have been though, I really do think this is a topic worth kind of really exploring. Aggregators were the belle of the ball this year. It was incredible seeing how much money they were throwing out there. I mean, not just backing, fancy booths and, table service at exclusive clubs, racking up bills in the $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 range.
Yeah.
But like even the Tesla gimmick, right? Like basically they're saying, if you just refer us, we'll cut your check for $25,000 to $50,000. That means that if you're selling your brand, like what does that check look like? And I just think it's incredible that these guys are coming in and basically they're trying to play the game at a big boy level that I don't think we have ever seen before in this industry.
Right. But what was interesting too is that, of course, there's one of the things that certainly the Canopy specializes at is getting those brands. We've had a few of the clients that we've managed over the last year or two that we did such an awesome job on our side that it made them ripe for acquisition, and they got acquired. And of course, then we lose that as a client.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah, I mean, that sucks,
So
but
a trophy
that's
for
the path.
us. Yeah, it sucks from a business model, but it's awesome because our team's like, going, yeah, of course we did good
And
on
that's
it.
the path. I feel like, so one of the things that I think that we should definitely touch on for future content is that I think that a lot of people that start a brand, you know, and Amazon is like the jumping launch pad for it, which is what most of us did. I think that a lot of them, like, they go into it, and the ones that are successful, the ones that, and not every time, but a lot of the ones that end up being moderately successful are the ones that really embrace the idea of building a brand. The problem is, I think a lot of people that are trying to build a brand, they're just attached to it, and they're like, well, this is what I do now, and they don't really put a lot of thought into the exit. But the path is, you know, if you get to a point, maybe you're at 50, 100, $150,000 a month in revenue, that might be your ceiling, because you've maybe, like, if you're like me, you've never run a business like this before, and you could figure it out, or you could end up realizing, okay, I need some help. And that's what agencies do, right? They go, okay, well, we have multiple brains back here. We have 5, 6, 7, 12 people just in this department that will all put their input in here to get these fantastic results. That's next level thinking, right? And then what happens is, when somebody like Canopy does such a good job, like, that's the path. This is what you want. Like, let's grow this and exit it, because with that exit money, you could do so much more, right? Like, you could turn around and start 3 more brands, which is
what a lot of them do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think about how
They
these
get this massive cash influx and
these
reinvent it.
conversations are so different now. I mean, back 5 years ago, they were, hey, let's throw up a garlic press and let's work from the beach because that's how this business can be run. But now conversations are starting with, how are you going to exit? That's how conversations are starting with these people getting into Amazon now. It's not, how can I work from my laptop anymore? It's how can I exit for a big payday? So I mean, the whole market as a whole, the whole industry as a whole has matured so much just in the past 3 or 4 years, and aggregators are a big reason for that.
Right. All right, let's keep things moving forward here. I mean, I want to make sure that we're just throwing out the nuggets and really kind of giving some of the, like, hey, here's what we learned, here's what was missing. Because I see some of the questions that are coming in on chat. Really appreciate that. Do me a favor, for those of you who are on the call right now, throw a 1 in the chat if you are following along and we're at a good pace. Throw me a 0 if we need to do something different. So awesome, appreciate that. I'd love to see. Yes, thank you, man. A lot of you are actually paying attention and really interested in. Oh, fantastic, love that. All right, so yeah, aggregators, of course, hot incentives to grow your brand. I think there's a lot of different ways we can kind of paraphrase that. I think we have a separate slide on each one of these, right, Anthony?
I don't, you know what? I don't
No,
think so.
maybe
I
not.
think we
Okay.
just do the bullet point. But
Okay.
but that right there, we just touched on that. The hot incentive to grow your brand is that
Get a Tesla.
you want an exit, and the people you want to exit, right? And then the people who will help you get to that point, like, basically we're trying to create a win-win situation, right? So you have agencies that are like, look, despite the fact that we would love it if we could have you as a client for the next 30 years, chances are that's not going to happen statistically anyway. So the best result is for us to help you get to the point where you can exit. And the hot incentive for the seller is, okay, now I need to like realistically think, given lifestyle, life cycles of products on Amazon, given the difficulty of growing off of Amazon, like, have a real thought process about what does my exit look like if I just go ahead and move down this path. So
Yeah.
Right now is actually everybody's incentivized to get brands to a point where they're attractive to investors.
Right. Yep, absolutely. And that kind of ties in also, of course, great reasons to sell your brand through aggregators. I know that a number of you are probably like going to say, look, there's no way I'm even close to entertaining a conversation with an aggregator. Here's what I'll tell you. And this is the same kind of conversation that you can have with us. You could have with an aggregator. An aggregator may not, book the meeting with you, but we'll sit down. We'll say, hey, here's what you're doing correct. Here's what you're doing incorrect. Here's some things that you need to consider if your plan is to, at some point, maybe it's not a hot topic for you just yet, but at some point, if you want to be fully prepared for somebody to come in and say, I'm willing to throw cash at you in order to take over your brand, and you may be like, well, you know what? The timing's right. I want to go travel with my family, whatever your reason is. pay for your kids' college. It may become right for you, but you've got to know what numbers you need to be getting correct and what the sequence of those are and where your profitability, all these kinds of things. It's not just straight sales. There's a lot of elements that go into making your product acquisitionable. Is that a word? I'm making up words today for some reason. It makes it qualified to be acquired or to be of interest. And we're talking about aggregators, but don't forget that there's other business models out there when it comes to small investors, when it comes to other brands that want to partner with you and maybe co-market. There's other opportunities that you should definitely be taking a look at. We're simply just saying from a Prosper Show standpoint, the big money was kind of being thrown out there by these aggregators who are looking for like this rapid, like we want to acquire as many, growth brands as possible. But if you're not there yet, cool. Just make sure you're following a solid plan, making sure you're looking at the right numbers so that you are preparing yourself over the next 1 to 5 years so that your brand is not only cash flow positive and very profitable and sustainable, and you are growing your market share. All these things are going to help put you closer to being qualified to be an acquisition target. All right. Any other comments from Anthony or Matt?
No, I mean, that's the thing that I was having conversations with. People are thinking about that regardless if it was a thought in their brain a year ago. It's important. And I think it's really just a good way to think about starting your business anyways. If you're doing all of the things that make your business acquirable, you're treating this like a real business. So, I mean, I think everyone should at least entertain these thoughts because it's how to do this business the right way.
Right. Yep. Very good. All right. So as far as some of the vendor news that we saw on this one, third-party logistics. So this was kind of interesting. So when it came to things like third-party logistics, accounting software, Amazon software, those were kind of like the accounting. Actually, I'm not sure if as far as how many accounting software I saw, I think it was more like financiers, people who are willing to give money to brands in order to expand their product lines. There was plenty of Amazon software vendors. I think they kind of overrepresented what they needed to. They weren't as I don't think they were as busy, as popular as some of the other booths. The third-party logistics is what I personally noticed was obviously absent. Like in other words, I would have expected there to have been, 6 to 10 vendors when it came to 3PL, when it came to freight forwarding, these kinds of things. And I think I saw maybe 1 or 2. It was like, it stood out to me as like, wow, the vendors regarding logistics. And this kind of goes to Diane's point earlier. She goes, does anybody know, was there any discussion at Prosper as far as what's the recovery plan for logistics for getting, factory, products that are manufactured actually out of China, across the ocean, and actually through a U.S. port, actually in order to get it to a marketplace, let alone which actually get it to the warehouse and get it checked in. And I do have some comments as far as which warehouses. Here's a hint: Ontario, California is not the warehouse as far as to get checked in that. But yeah, third-party logistics was notably absent for me.
It's interesting though, because that was a lot of the conversations, those side conversations that we were talking about, a lot of those had to do with third-party logistics and warehousing and Amazon's inventory limit, because that's one of the biggest talks in the space right now. So the fact that they were missing from a booth standpoint is a really weird statistic to me, but I know that they were there because I had 4 conversations at those tables, those stand-up tables that Anthony was talking about. I had conversations with 3 of them that were there. There was a presence, they just didn't have booths, which is, you're right, super interesting.
Well,
Right.
and
Which
what
makes
else
sense.
is super interesting is that they didn't put them on the stage, which kind of plays to the whole idea that you were talking about, Brian, that Prosper Show this year really didn't focus on the education as much as they did on the networking potential. It was just strange to me that such a hot topic wouldn't be represented from the stage. But yeah, I only know of 2. Matt said 3 vendors that were there. They were very underrepresented, even though this has got to be a hot time for them, considering the fact that so many people are really concerned about how on earth. But then again, I don't really know, like, do they even have a solution? Like, here's what I do know.
That's just it. That's kind of the uncomfortable conversation. It's like, hey, we've got a booth. Come talk to us. Oh, by the way, we have a 1 to 3 month backlog. Well,
Right,
what do I
right.
need you for right now? You know,
So
like, why am I talking to you? You know?
here's what I do know though. I know that there is constant rapid advancement and actually integrating AI with the software that handles the logistics and the warehousing. Like this is something that they're making huge strides in. In fact, I fully plan on hitting this topic probably in another webinar or some content because it is such a hot topic. And I know that the technology it might not all the way be there yet. The solutions may not be very clear, but right now there are definitely great minds that are looking to solve this issue. The other thing that I noticed though is that it's one of those things where everything has a silver lining. And this is one of those things where just like Amazon's inventory limits kind of pushed everybody into start thinking about third-party warehousing, the delays specifically from Asia are kind of pushing people into thinking about diversifying their sourcing. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Like you should be looking at, can you source from Mexico? Can you source from South America if you're in North America? Can you source closer to home? Can you source locally? Like where can you go to try to find and I know it's hard, right? It's easier said than done. A lot of people probably go there and they say, well, I can't find a vendor or, I can't find a manufacturer for this product anywhere close to me. But this is the part where you start thinking, what other products can you move into? Can you find a niche supplier closer to you that's going to make you have the competitive advantage? Because all your competitors are still importing from too far away.
Yeah.
Well, I think before China was the option because of how cheap it was to source products from China. But now that logistics are so expensive and so complicated now, people are actually looking domestically because of how hard it is and how expensive it is. I mean, my shipping costs have gone up significantly just in the past 6 months, 8 months. So, I mean, it's almost worthwhile for me to start having those conversations and digging into those things now, because now cost is becoming a little bit less of a differentiator now.
Yeah, we're also seeing as far as alternate countries too, and I think we're seeing more where some of the conversations we had, and that's one of the reasons why I love the fact that we were all very actively engaged in the networking and talking person to person. Because Anthony, you made a great point, is that from the stage there was some topics that people wanted to hear, they just weren't there, and fortunately we were in those conversations. It was funny how much business we were doing. It's funny, some of the business discussion. That's the funny thing about entrepreneurs, especially in the Amazon space, is that we go to some of these after parties that the aggregators would throw, and the music, it would be just like so loud that you'd have to be yelling at each other. And what are we yelling at each other? We're talking about the Amazon business because we're just like so ingrained in it. But those are some of the conversations we had. But one of the things that I was hearing quite a few times where people are saying, like, oh yeah, no, I'm sourcing from Vietnam. I'm sourcing from South Korea. I'm sourcing from some other country, from India, sourcing from some other country, and they're able to produce in the same timelines that I was able to have it produced back in China, that are now being bottlenecked in China. But then they'd come back and they say, it's like, great. So I have it manufactured in 3 or 4 weeks, and then it sits on the water for 2 months, 2-3 months, because it sits there in the parking lot outside of the ports waiting to get through customs.
That's because everybody is using the same trade routes in the clogged ports. I was talking to somebody about this exact thing. It was genius too. They gave me a tip, and this was at the Top Golf party. But basically, he has completely rerouted all of his clients because he runs a logistics company. Instead of going in through California and being stuck there waiting, he's going all the way around the top and coming back and then railing it from somewhere up north, like close to New York. And that's actually taking less time, because where everybody else is stuck at a port for 2 months, an extra, I think, 10 days around the top on a ship and then railed down, because the railways right now are not clogged, right? Because nobody's doing this. And I was like, that is such genius. So there are ways to hack this. There are ways to hack everything. You really got to be diligent on having these conversations and figuring out what you can do.
Now, let me ask kind of in the chat here, is like, for those of you who have ordered containers in the past, whether it's like a 20 or 40 foot container, throw in there as far as like, what are some of the, if you're getting any kind of quotes, I've got some numbers in my mind as far as some of the container shipping, ocean shipping quotes that you've gotten. I would love to hear some feedback in the chat if you've got some of those lately, but I'm certainly hearing where, even some of my own products, like, we're getting for like a 20-foot container. I think we're probably getting like maybe, 12 to 15,000 for ocean shipping for a 20-foot container, and closer to 20,000 for a 40-foot container. And which is typically, that's probably, that's at least double what it used to be.
Right.
And then that's in addition to the time delay, of course, bottleneck. So I think that's a great idea as far as like, if you can find alternative ports, maybe there's some smaller ones where you can get it, into a smaller port and then maybe reroute it. It's almost kind of like, instead of taking a direct flight, from point A to point B, you book a whole bunch of one-way tickets on a route that goes around, and yet it still gets there faster. It's that kind of, you got to get a little bit of creative thinking, and there should have been somebody at the show that was speaking more to that or offering that as a service. Didn't see it, didn't hear it. All right, so Abigail was saying, so 17,000 pounds for a 40-foot. Okay, yeah, 10 times the cost. Okay, yeah. Yeah, it is. Well, especially if you're doing any kind of an air freight, that's just like, oh man, it's crazy. Software. Let's talk about software for a minute here. I know that there is, certainly a boom in the past, 2 years regarding AI-driven software. There's also the accounting side of things. I would say the accounting. I saw less of the accounting now. The ones that I didn't see that I was hoping to see this year is the company that I use for. In other words, it's like for like some of the product, Amazon product accounting, bookkeeping, taxes, that kind of stuff. I personally use Link My Books, but they're kind of a newer player on the market. They could not make it out across the water, to actually have a booth. But I know that they're certainly, some of those kind of accounting solutions makes it certainly easier to deal with taxes and bookkeeping and cash flow. So if for those of you who maybe are struggling in one of those three areas, there is software that's out on there. I don't know, did you get a chance, Anthony or Matt, to talk to any of those vendors regarding bookkeeping or accounting?
I talked to a couple of inventory management, but not accounting. I personally believe, though, if your strength is not cash flow, which I've struggled with this, then those two things, like, it's good to know. Back when I started, this didn't exist, but it's good to know now there is both bookkeeping, accounting software, as well as inventory management software. These two things actually fully address cash flow specifically, which,
right,
as you get to higher volumes, you will learn is a very important thing when you're trying to scale.
Yeah, especially given the way that some of the kind of the odd things that Amazon does as far as like payouts, where you're expecting, a big fat check, come in, and for whatever reason they say it's like, oh, well, we're going to hold back this amount, for this other reason, or, for in advance for your plan, what we expect your fees to be. It's like, it's hard to predict what that cash flow is going to be coming out of, your seller account sometimes. And so some of these software and services simply just kind of make it smoother. Honestly, I think probably the biggest pain point I always get is regarding like regional, like local taxes, like the different tax filings. Ugh, man, shoot me, and so I think there's certainly some software that is out there. I know I've got my favorite that is working well for me. I did not get a chance to have a conversation with any of the vendors that were there. I didn't see a whole lot. What I saw more of on the accounting side was actually more the lending side, where companies were coming in and saying, yeah, we'll lend to you $1 million, whatever. They weren't investors.
Yeah, that's
saying,
it's a whole other part, right? Everybody's talking about aggregators for acquisitions, but there are also all of these. And I think this is a new thing. They probably saw the success of the aggregators and realized, you know what? Pretty much everybody's looking for cash flow injection. So then they come in and they're like, all right, well, we'll be lenders. And that was a fantastic representation. I'm pretty sure lenders were strongly involved in the after party scene as well.
Right.
Just kind of showing everybody a good time, which is kind of a psychological signal / trigger that, hey, we have money. You should come talk to us, which I think is brilliant. So yeah, for those of you who aren't like looking at that conversation with aggregators, you might be looking at that conversation with lenders for a cash flow injection.
Yeah, because cash management is a very real thing. It can actually completely kill a business because you commit a whole bunch of cash to the manufacturing of a product that takes 3 months to finally get to market. That can hurt, especially if you've got other products that you need to be pulling in for Q4. If you have to go to an alternate source because you're running out of stock and you've got no idea when you're going to get your container in, sometimes you've got to make a special purchase in order to have something air freighted across, just to kind of make it across, to continue the sales and not run out of stock. And sometimes your hands may be tied unless you've got some kind of a vendor that says, hey, we can spot you the money in order to get through this rough period.
Yeah, along with the maturation of the business of the industry as a whole, I think the service providers are starting to mature a lot too. So I actually had a conversation with one of those lenders who has a super interesting model of repaying based off of product sales. So I mean, you have these lenders that are now kind of customizing their business specifically for e-commerce sellers and the nuances of e-commerce sellers, and how most of the problem, like you said, cash management is having to do with inventory and making sure you have enough inventory. So I had a conversation with one of those lenders who their model of repaying was super interesting, and it wasn't a typical kind of a lending situation. So that side of the business is starting to mature as well.
Good. Let's talk about some of the other Amazon software. We certainly saw some big booths from, some of the AI software. It is something that I was kind of joking around at the conference, even with the Quartile team, is like, people would come have a conversation with us because they had a bad experience with some software or another agency, and they wanted us, a second opinion because they knew that somebody's got to have it figured out. And so they'd have a conversation with our team. And, I'd be sitting down at one of the tables and talking to a brand, and they say, it's like, yeah, we just had this nightmare experience. And they say, well, do you have an opinion? And I said, well, yeah, no, we actually love that software vendor. And they're like, they look at me like, what are you talking about? It's like, well, because they send us more business than anybody else. It's it's kind of funny to laugh at it. And let's in all seriousness, it's like every company, every person is going to have turnover. There's no company out there who's got a perfect track record, nor is a fit for every situation. It just doesn't work that way, right? There's people involved. The same thing comes to do with different software and different automation software. Is that some have a bad experience. You could have a bad experience with an agency, with a consultant, with doing it yourself in house, with having hiring your brother to do it because he's good at spreadsheets. It doesn't matter. Somebody's going to, it's not going to be a right fit for everybody. And you do have to, as a business owner, you can't simply just let control go to somebody else and just hope for the best. You've got to be involved, right? We actually, with our clients, with Canopy, we actually force them to be involved. If you're not willing to meet with us on a weekly basis and have a two-way conversation, you're not part of this organization. You're not you're not having a partnership with us, because we know that clear communication, so that we're all on the same page all the time, is critical to the success and the track record that we develop. So, and a lot of times we don't see that with other companies. I want to see it more. I want to see other companies, whether software or service, I want them to step up and to have that level of commitment to their clients. My only hope is that as an industry that it evolves and it gets there. We certainly did not see it this year. We had way too many conversations of people saying like, yeah, they spent a whole bunch of money on this big booth over here, and I need to get away from this as quickly as possible. What can you do?
That's unfortunate. I will say on the brighter side, though, there were some software reps there that it was really nice to see. Obviously, I'm
sure.
a big fan of Helium 10. and then Rob Stanley over at Gatita, both of which had very comfortable booths because they brought couches. That is very cool.
That was spot on. Yeah, that was a good idea. That is true.
Right? Everybody was lounging at their booths. I'm like, how are you getting all these people to chill out? Oh, that's because they can sit down.
Yes.
That was smart. So, it was there were a lot of positive experiences too with our favorite software providers out there that we're obviously friends with because, like as Amazon sellers, all of us use this stuff too.
Yeah.
So that was my take.
One of the areas that I think that could definitely improve software, Diane made a comment here in chat that reminded me of this, and that is how many, whether it's coaching or clients or just people we talk to in general, how many are getting false positives from Amazon's own automated software that says, oh, well, you're selling medical waste products, and so it's like not even close, like just kind of random. It's like you're getting flagged and getting removed from running ads or from having your product even listed because of a false positive that Amazon software. And then to try to get that resolved through Amazon, we've seen more cases where we had to have an attorney get involved to talk to Amazon before we finally got the correct answer from Amazon support. And I think Diane brought up a great point. It's been more of a nightmare this past year of just the support has just been garbage from Amazon in a lot of cases. We do have some of our own internal contacts within Amazon that we certainly leverage as best as we can, but general support for things like false positives, delistings, blocks, those are still a very real problem that it shouldn't have to take an attorney for Amazon to realize, oh no, we screwed up. Let's go ahead and fix this.
You're right.
And I wish that there was software. The reason I bring this up is I wish there was software out there to help kind of script that, to mitigate that, to have the right conversation. I don't know exactly what the attorneys are doing in order to suddenly get their attention other than maybe a legal letterhead, but why couldn't you have a software that just generates a legal letterhead?
I don't know the legal ramifications of that. I will say that software currently, they do have alerts, which is at least one way to be proactive. So I was just going to say one of the ways to kind of be proactive, right? It would be wonderful if Amazon served us as sellers, but we all know that sellers are not the top priority for Amazon. So in the event of that, a couple ways to be proactive. One is to have some kind of, like, all of us are using some kind of software. Most of them have an alert function. So make sure that you have your alerts turned on so that you're aware of strange changes that might happen, category, movement or hijacking or buy box loss, etc. The second thing you can do is regularly, and I would say maybe even monthly, once you're to the point where you're no longer kind of in your business as much, make sure that you train your VAs to do this stuff. But monthly, go ahead and turn on that category listing report and download it so that you have a fresh version of whatever it is that Amazon says is in your listing every month. And then finally, just keep those category listing reports translated into a flat file and keep that at the ready. One thing that you can do a lot of times is get around some of the BS that the false flags might cause, or hijackers and things of that nature might cause, and by delete listing, wait 20 minutes, wait an hour, re-upload. By the way, deleting your listing does not actually hurt your inventory or reviews or anything like that. All of that is still in the catalog. And once you re-upload your ASIN and everything, is going to reconnect. So it sucks to have to do that, but it's like, if Amazon's going to take 3 months to resolve an issue, it might be faster for you to just be proactive in that way. So that's the advice I definitely want to give people regarding that.
Yeah, that's a fantastic hack. We actually have a slide that's coming up here in a couple that talks about some of the tactics and the hacks that we learned about. I do want to get to that, of course. And I know that we're kind of running down on time here. So I think that was a great one for those of you who didn't kind of hear it. What's the 15-second recap of that one, Anthony, for those who weren't quite paying attention to that gem.
Keep an accurate flat file at the ready so that in the event that you need to push a change quickly, you can delete your listing and then re-upload accurately with no loss in data.
I love that. Thank you. Any other discussion you want to have regarding Amazon software? I know that we need to kind of get into some of the other topics that we had for Prosper.
Nope, let's move it.
Okay, cool. All right, let's move forward here. PPC companies targeting aggregators. Frankly, admittedly, Canopy was one of them. We had a number of partner discussions that we had started, a while back that we were able to follow up on at Prosper. So that's part of why networking works out pretty well. We already do. That is something where the aggregators don't always have the in-house expertise or the team, and so then they look like, okay, who's top of their game in the market for the different services, and so that's one of the reasons why we have these kind of conversations with aggregators. One of the things that I had a couple of funny conversations. One of them was certainly disturbing and funny at the same time. Is we're starting to see where some of the I'll say Wall Street investors, and I'll just say just investors that come in, and I've got respect for the ability for those investor organizations to generate capital for investing. But what I find a bit disturbing or shocking, I guess, is how little knowledge they have of e-commerce, let alone Amazon specifically, that they have as far as knowledge in this space. And they're literally hiring people out of W-2 jobs at Amazon and saying, oh, we have expertise now because we hired an employee out of Amazon. And as Diane will absolutely attest to, is like, yeah, that's a gamble. It all depends on who you actually get and what specific knowledge that they have. And some of the advice that they get is just so unbelievably bad that the conversation that we're having about that is we're observing where these aggregator investors, some of these are coming in with no native knowledge of e-commerce at all. They're just coming in with money and they're pounding their chest saying, you need to show respect to me because I'm the one coming in with money. They're quite arrogant in the fact. And yet they don't listen to proper advice, and they're going to set up the brand for failure, which disappoints me because I know that a lot of us have products or have brands that we have a personal connection to, maybe, and we would take it personally if we sold it off to somebody, we let our baby go, and then they basically killed off that baby. It would not be okay. But unfortunately, there are investors that are starting to come into the market because they're attracted by some of the big aggregators who are making big news, and they're coming in and saying, hey, we've got money too, and we're going to talk to you, and this is what we're going to do. But it's kind of the running joke is smart money, dumb money. There's definitely both out there now.
It's interesting how the conversations are different with Aggregator. We actually, like you mentioned, we've had a couple of conversations in Canopy about having some of these aggregators hand us some brands to manage. And, for them, ACOS, that's not even a concern of theirs. It's not even a number that they look at. Like, they're looking at top line sales and they want it now. And I mean, such a different conversation than actually everyday sellers who, that's the most important thing for them is ACOS, and something that our PPC analysts are pretty in tune with. But man, it's fun kind of watching these conversations happen where it's, instead of an ACOS target, this is where we want to get from a top line sales standpoint, and a lot of it is pretty unrealistic.
Yeah, and part of that, so that people understand as far as what aggregators do, is they come in with a bunch of money and they've got, it's not simply just like they're just kind of raining cash in and saying, okay, this is awesome. They are literally coming in and they're saying, okay, we're going to purchase a brand on cheap. Maybe they're paying 2 to 5 times what the annual profit is for that profit. That's one of the reasons why we focus in on profit at Canopy. 2 to 5 times, and they're going to repackage it later on for 15, 20 times. They're basically going to package it together. And so the top line sales makes for higher level investors, the reason they're going for some of these top line sales as opposed to profitability is because they purchased based off of profitability, but they're reselling it based off of packaged total dollar amount. Because a lot of the bigger investors that buy from the aggregators, they don't even have a conversation. It's like, well, bring me a $50 million package. Don't bother me with this $1 million, $2 million junk. That's your problem. And so that's why there's two different conversations going on. Is the aggregators are purchasing based off of profitability, and then there's a reselling to somebody who's like packaged together total dollar amount doesn't make sense to move forward with it.
I kind of want to touch base on my thoughts and observations here, particularly with this topic of PPC companies targeting aggregators. So for starters, there are actually two really good. So first off, one of the things that I noticed in conversations at Prosper was that the aggregators were having way more conversations with vendors, particularly with agencies, than they were with individual sellers. They kept coming to the vendors going, who can you refer? And there are two really good reasons for this. One, a lot of them recognize that they are not operators, and they know that agencies like Canopy are operators. And therefore, you know, our advice is actually a lot better. And two, we have access to financials. If you go out and you ask a seller, they might not even be fully aware of the numbers that these aggregators are interested in.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the reason why I personally think that the smart aggregators are having partnerships and conversations with agencies such as Canopy because of that, which makes it a win-win for everybody. The aggregator is going to get more high quality brands into their their acquisition funnel, and then our clients are going to be on a path to exit. Anyway, beyond that, though, one thing I actually really want to bring up with you, Brian, I know we talked about this briefly in a live from the show, but I'd really like to bring it up here. One of the concerns that I've heard from people, particularly about aggregators moving into the space, especially these big money Wall Street guys that aren't operators, is they fear that one of the contributing factors to rising ad costs is that there's so many people jumping out there just throwing a bunch of money without having a clue how to actually run ads on Amazon. What can you say to speak to that?
Yes, it is happening. It is not the only reason. I don't want people thinking it's like, oh, it's the aggregator's fault that my ad costs have gone up. There's multiple factors that contribute to that, including your very own failure. And I'm not talking to you, Anthony. I'm talking about the brand owner. The brand owner, you're failing to do things that need to be done in 2021, and you could be doing better as far as profitability, conversion rates, those kind of things. I'll touch on that a little bit later, but what we're seeing on this is the aggregators, kind of like what I was talking about earlier, as far as like you get some of the dumb the big investors with some dumb money that they're not operators. I think you put that well, is that they're out there seeking, they want to talk to, okay, who are these service providers and agencies that created this success for the brand that I just acquired? And because who else do you got? Obviously they're prospecting, at the same time, but they obviously want to find an operator that has a track record that is that they can basically say like, okay, we want you to manage all of our accounts because either it takes a load off of us, or you've got a track record that we want reproduced with the companies, the brands that we've acquired. Some of the ones that we've seen on that, though, as far as some of the dumb money, is the example that I was showing before, where they'll hire somebody out of Amazon, and the person out of Amazon will literally advise, it's like, you need to stop all the ad campaigns that you've been doing and start over from scratch. And that's how you're going to get more visibility, which anybody who's been in this game long enough knows that that's just a fool who's just throwing money away right there. The problem with that, of course, is that the way that it hits the algorithm as far as the ad auction is that they're going to end up paying a higher cost per click, a higher ad spend, and then they're willing to throw more money at their budget and their ad spend in order to make up for it, because they have the money, right? They're not thinking like a business owner. They're thinking like, I have this pot of cash, and I'm going to just throw it at the problem and hope that it magically fixes it, makes it work. That is one factor that's going to make advertising more expensive. Two is simply just honestly, it's buyer psycho. I'm sorry, not buyer. It's seller psychology. With restrictions, with COVID restrictions being relaxed this year, we saw in March, April, May, and June where the overall traffic volume of shoppers on Amazon and other e-commerce sites dropped because people were actually getting out the door. They were excited to go to restaurants and go shopping and just be out there doing something. They're not necessarily in front of their computer just saying, oh, I'm going to order 20 things from Amazon and have it, dropped on my door. They're actually going to go out and get it now because they can. And that lower traffic produces lower conversion rates, produces lower sales. Sellers make the mistake of panicking and saying like, oh, my sales are down. I need to increase my advertising and be more aggressive in order to make up for it, because they want to have it. Like, I want level, consistent, what it used to be kind of sales. And it must be my advertising. That must be the lever I need to pull. And they're screwing it up because even as an advertising agency, Canopy doesn't recommend leading with the advertising. And some of you are probably going to say, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. In 2021, especially because of the volatile seasonality that's coming with COVID, the lower traffic, certainly post Prime Day, when we go into the summer glut and the traffic goes back down again, more and more sellers in your product niche are panicking to that. They're making poor choices as far as like how they're doing their ad spend, what their ad strategy is. They're not really looking at not just what the metrics are, but what the audience wants and what they're actually looking for, which is a big difference between software and humans, in my opinion. What they're doing is that they're panicking, they're spending more money, and they're not taking enough time to pivot or reboot their product listings. I'm talking about as far as like listing optimization. I'm talking about having your product stand out among a competition, what we usually call is the sea of sameness, right? Where you go out your product niche and everybody basically looks the same, similar images, similar title, similar selling points. And God forbid you've got the 5-year-old amazing selling machine add to cart description. If you're that far behind, they're still speaking to, they're stuffing their keywords into their titles. They're speaking to the search engine for indexing reasons, and it's not paying off like it used to, right? In 2021, if you're not highly focused on making your product stand out from the competition, grabbing the attention of the shopper, give them some compelling reason to think that your product is different than everybody else that surrounds your product, and then actually optimizing your listing in order to demonstrate the benefit to the shopper and what's in it for them, you as a seller are completely blowing it in 2021, and you're blaming it on other factors like aggregators and PPC spend, but you're not doing the work that you need to be doing.
Yes, I want to speak to that. I want to speak to that real quick, because this is what you just said is a huge gold nugget. I've been in this space long enough, and so have you, that I guarantee will agree with this. It's crazy that, a lot of people don't realize every product has a life cycle. And the reason is because you come out there with something great. It starts off, it's doing really well. And then all of a sudden, competition makes it a sea of sameness. People think, oh, well, if I'm ranked really well, and I've already got my PPC on lockdown, then it'll sail like that forever. That is not the way it works.
And a lot of the
biggest brands.
A lot of the training courses are teaching just copy what's successful. And then we're surprised that everything looks the same.
And to some degree, I understand like kind of using inspiration of that which works. But the point is once the sea of sameness gets so big, one thing that I've seen in just anecdotally, like dozens of times, it's so amazing that people don't like immediately realize this. As soon as that starts happening, they identify that that's what's happening and sales start dropping, they rebrand, they repackage, they revamp the listing, and sure enough, ad costs go down again, CPCs go down again, everything's profitable again, they're ranking better than before. Why is that? Because all they did was just elevate themselves out of that. I love that sea of sameness. They just, like that's the key. That's the nugget right there.
Yeah, but you see that in the packaging and the shelves on retail storefronts also, is every once in a while you can't find the product you've been using for 10 years because they changed the packaging on you. They're doing that because They are pivoting. They're not simply just like going, oh, I wanted to be more creative in my packaging. No, they're trying to solve a problem. Awesome that you're loyal, but they're trying to solve a problem because they're basically getting watered down. They're losing market share among a lot of other competitors simply because what they used to stand out, now they blend in. You've got to turn, you got to pivot, you got to stand out again. I don't care if you made that niche, if you made that market and everybody else copied you, great, you're the innovator. It's time to pivot. That's one of the things that I'm also very proud of with Canopy is that we have a phenomenal creative services team that just kills it when it comes to what was the statistic we had on that? It was like a 38% average increase in conversion rate.
Shout out to Steve.
Shout out to Steve.
He's so incredible.
Yeah. That is so easy. I guess probably Matt, you and Blake could probably shut that out easily. It's like, that's probably one of your easiest closes, once we kind of demonstrate what our track record is in that. But what I'm saying on this, I say it from a standpoint is we look at it from, Canopy has what we call a Canopy Accelerator, which starts out with listing optimization and then advances second. See, there's a sequence here. It advances second onto native Amazon advertising and then moves on to the big boys, which is the off Amazon DSP kind of advertising. All of these we manage in-house, right? That gives us a competitive advantage because we can develop proprietary strategies that work like nobody else can. We have quality control. We have constant communication across each of the individuals and the teams that they coordinate everything together in-house to make sure it all works seamlessly together. That's how we're able to level up so many brands to the point where we lose them because they get bought. And so I just feel that a lot in my heart because I am extremely proud about what our team has accomplished, especially in this past year. It's just killing it, So, what I was going to say on the opportunities on this is that opens up a huge opportunity for you on that sea of sameness, on listing optimization, off of take the road less traveled. Do the opposite of what your competition is doing. This is a huge opportunity for you to recognize a similar pattern, a sea of sameness in your product niche, and ask yourself. You can hire a coach like me or an agency like Canopy, but you can ask yourself and say, what do I need to change? How do I use Amazon Experiments A/B split testing, by the way, for main image and title? If you're not using that, you're also screwing it up. In order to test doing something opposite of what the competition is doing, so you grab the eye of the shopper and you stand out from the competition. If you're not doing that, you're not getting the traffic you deserve, and you're probably not getting the conversion rates that are going to make your ads profitable. So don't blame it on your competition. Don't blame it on aggregators. Don't blame it on seasonality, because there's levers that you should be pulling right now that if you're not, for God's sakes, do it. Do something. All right. Sorry, I get on a soapbox when it comes to that topic because it has such a huge impact. New markets now open. We're going to talk about that. We're starting to see a lot more buzz when it comes to Australia and Arab Emirates. I'm not sure if I've heard much as far as like some of the European, like some of the Northern European markets, but I know like Australia, India, AE, Emirates, those are certainly starting to come into their own now.
Yeah, well, I mean, and even the ones that aren't new, a lot of international expansion is new to sellers in general. They're always looking at what the next product is without realizing the opportunity in front of you to possibly move to international markets. And it is intimidating because you have things like that, and like you have to have an entity overseas, etc. But Amazon really does try to make it as easy as possible by offering programs to kind of help walk you through that. The reason why these other markets are such a phenomenal opportunity is because the world is increasing their e-commerce participation. India is seeing unprecedented numbers. It is unfortunate because they've been hit so hard by COVID, but e-commerce is going through the roof in India. We're seeing articles every day about stuff, expanding in in India, and that's a great opportunity because there's a huge population there. I know a lot of people are like, they shy away from places like Canada. I personally know more than one seven-figure sellers that only sell in Canada. They don't even have .com. They're only in .ca. So I mean that's phenomenal, and it's because like these areas there are e-commerce shoppers. So it's like if you haven't gone that route, like this very well might be an easy way for you to expand because then you don't have to source from a different supplier. Just will this product work in this market? Yes, it will. Let's move there.
Yeah, and I would say even like I see more brands that have shied away from EU, from the common marketplaces there because there's enough competition there that it can be competitive. But you're right, some of the smaller markets that we may have been dismissive about, that it's like, oh, well, that's only going to add on 5%. Well, it depends on the market share you get. If there's enough of a barrier of entry for a brand to sell in an existing or a new or just a small marketplace, and you're one of the few brands that actually accomplishes that, and instead of having 500 competitors, you've got 50 competitors, it's very likely you're going to have a much bigger market share. So what you thought was going to be 5% of your 5% of sales actually turns out to be quite a bit more because you actually own a bigger slice of the pie. And so I would not necessarily say expansion to Europe unless you've got a product that is uniquely suited for the European audiences. But I would definitely take a second look in the next year at some of the smaller or newer marketplaces. I totally agree with you on that, Anthony.
I want to add a point of contention for the Europe thing. I sat on a fantastic panel, or listened to a fantastic panel where Jana Krekic, I think that's how you say her name, from YLT Translations, was talking about European expansion. Yes, it is competitive over there, but here's the cool thing, right? So many people move over there and they don't really know what they're doing. And she gave a beautiful example talking about Starbucks trying to move to Australia. Starbucks tried to move to Australia. Australia is an English-speaking company or country, so they used the same usual Western type marketing and language, and it failed miserably because, come to find out after deeper diving, Australia's coffee culture is specifically and uniquely Italian. So they had to reroute like what they call everything. I mean, that affected what they call the sizes, that affected the kind of food that they offer, literally everything. And then when they changed it to more Italian, they skyrocketed. And so that's the kind of thing, like you can still move to a competitive European market as long as you go into it knowing this is not just a different language. You're not just translating your listing. You're literally looking at their culture. If you have a product that people in their culture will buy, as long as you get your message correct, you can be a competitor over there.
Yeah. That's kind of one of the reasons why internally we use translators that are actually native to the marketplace that's being sold to, so that you don't just have somebody who understands how to translate the words in the language, but actually understands the culture of that. Even if it's English to English, you think it just translates, and that's a great example. It's pretty common in order to screw up the translation and let alone when it comes to things like benefit statements and that kind of stuff. But to screw up the translation going to a different language, but to this, every country and even different regions of a country are going to have different cultural needs, and I think that was pretty put well. We got two more slides I do want to get through because we're running over what I was hoping to do here because of, I don't know, one of us is talking too much. Let's talk about networking Vegas style. So those of you who did not make it to Prosper, we had obviously a lot of discussions at not only our trade show booth, but also other trade show booths as well. Discussions away from the crowds, whether those were in the hallways or between going in elevators, even going to rooms, that kind of stuff. And of course we had backroom discussions on a variety of topics, including things like advertising. I was kind of surprised that there wasn't very much advertising discussion from the stage, but that was kind of consistent, I guess, with the quality of the stage training that occurred this year. Hopefully they correct that for next one.
Absolutely. The best conversations are definitely these. Networking conversations. I can speak to that as well. I was very, very confused by the fact that they wouldn't touch on PPC from the stage, but hopefully that's a topic that they take into consideration for next year.
Yeah.
But we had great conversations at all like these opportunities, right? I mean, for example, one of the trade show booth discussions that I had, just kind of relaying the magnitude of the money that's being poured into this industry. I won't name who it is, but I was talking to kind of like a brand conglomerate, and they had literally just closed a round of funding the day before, to the tune of like $137 million. Like, what? What? That is, I mean, that blows my freaking mind. That is probably the biggest check I could possibly imagine in my head. And they're there at Prosper celebrating because the day before this happened. I'm like, well,
Right.
heck yeah, I'd be celebrating too.
Yeah,
That's
that'd be a
amazing.
good event. I do want to Matt, I would like to get some of your feedback as far as, because you were very much in the front lines when it came to our own booth, and some of the conversations you had probably involved things like, here's the biggest pain point, here's kind of where, give us some insight into what other sellers in the community, what seems to be driving some of their decision making these days.
Yeah, one of the biggest topics of conversation was on our booth. On the banner, it said full management or full service agency, and everyone asked about that. And I think people are seeing, and we've kind of touched on what the value is of having an internal Amazon creative services team and a networking or a PPC team and also a DSP team. When all of those teams are working together collaboratively, there's so much more opportunity to help grow the business and get insights into why something isn't working. So that's one of the first things that everybody asked when they came to the booth. So I think people are recognizing, and that's something that I think that we excel at. We're not just a PPC agency. I think a lot of people were surprised to know that we had an internal Amazon creative services team, and also, our partner success management department as well. So I think people didn't know that, I think, going in, and that was really one of the biggest things that got them to stop. And then the very first question that they asked is, from a full service standpoint, what do you do? I think people are realizing now, today's landscape, there's sourcing conversations that they need to be having. There's inventory conversations. There's supply chain conversations. There's all kinds of other conversations that they should be having, that they know that spending the half their day calling Seller Central support and trying to bang on their doors is not the best use of their time. So I think that was the biggest thing that I noticed right off the bat was, what do you offer from a full service standpoint?
Right. And the fact that we don't do subcontracting of it, we do everything in-house, I think is a big differentiator because of that communication and having everybody on the same page. You don't have these disconnected departments sort of like going, how come you guys are doing the opposite thing? That can be very disruptive, for those kind of situations. So we try to avoid that by making sure that everything is we have, project managers to make sure that everything is coordinated. I mean, yeah, I'm very happy with how we have things set up there.
Yeah, one of the things, I mean, for me, myself, when I assign a new partner to Canopy, one of the things that I do is I set up a reminder to check in with them 45 days after we bring them on. And unequivocally, the first thing that they talk about is the level of communication that they have with their teams. And especially when they're getting when we call them multi-service within Canopy, when they're getting multiple things, the kind of liaison conversations that our partner success management team has with all the other teams and kind of keeping them all working in a collaborative way is really something that sets us apart. And it's something that I'm able to talk about when we're having these conversations about, what do you offer from a full service standpoint?
Right. No, for sure. Yeah, it's interesting how many are trying to solve problems either in the communication they have with Amazon directly, or with like, how do I solve this logistics problem, with suppliers, with freight forwarders, with quality inspectors, with customs, all these things. And so obviously there's a lot more pain involved in that. I mean, I know where we excel, what our superpowers are, with the listing optimization, with the advertising, in native advertising, and of course the DSP advertising. But yeah, I would certainly agree is that a lot of sellers are looking for, they got multiple problems.
Yeah. And then
We got
for us,
99 problems. You know?
my favorite things about visiting other trade booths, I mean, I was kind of tied to our trade booth for the most part, but the conversations that I found the most interesting at other booths were things that we don't necessarily offer, services like product development. There was a booth that we had a great conversation with an agency that focuses on that, and logistics. There was a couple of conversations that I had about agencies that do that. So, partnering with those types of agencies or service providers that do something that you don't do is such a good win-win collaborative type of a relationship. And we made a lot of those. That was a lot of the conversations that we had as an agency.
Awesome. Appreciate that, man. Thank you. Like some of the discussions that we've had, we were talking about how like advertising and PPC was pretty limited as far as what came from the stage. There were a lot of people who were concerned as far as the rising costs of CPC, and of course, cost per click advertising costs. Any platform, as we've reported year over year, every single time we do our annual state of the platform, state of the union kind of address, is we're always talking about like, okay, here's how much advertising costs went up on average this quarter. It is normal. It will always be normal for any for any platform, including Amazon. And we're getting a lot. I would say there's more hype going on right now. Like people are like, "Ooh, this is a pain point. Let's go ahead and just let's turn the screw." And which I don't like to see because it's a normal thing, but I think it's going to get to the point where I think brands are starting to realize like I could get away with it before, kind of like aging and dieting. It's like I could get away with it before eating whatever I wanted, and now I can't. Same thing with advertising. It's like I used to be able to just like do whatever I wanted with advertising and do some optimization, and I would make it work. And it's getting tougher to do that because the costs are rising. What I had already discussed before is because of not just aggregators, not just of seasonality and panic by sellers, but also what I had mentioned before, which hopefully you heard, which was the opportunity for you to actually do something about it for your own brands by actually having your, doing some listing optimization, standing out from the crowd of competitors and really speaking to the shopper with compelling benefits, not wasting their time with keyword stuffing and trying to have a conversation with a search engine, have a conversation with your audience, care about them.
Well, I want to interject here because that I'm not afraid to have uncomfortable conversations. Speaking of these backroom talks about ACOS, I agree with what you're saying, but I do want to point out something. This is an interesting conversation I had with more than one individual that I respect greatly in this field. And they said that there was a big, very successful service provider who admitted that over the last year, the average ACOS, and they were focusing on ACOS in this conversation, but profitability was the metric they were looking at. The average ACOS or profit, the average ACOS increased from like 22 to 32% over the last year. So that's a 10% increase. And prediction is in the next 5 years, we might see sponsored product ads, ACOS, increased to over 50%. And so they're concerned, and this isn't by like sellers, this is by actual service providers. The concern that they have expressed is that we will see a day in the not so distant future that sponsored product ads are absolutely not profitable. I would love to hear your thoughts on that because that's a pretty bold claim.
But we see the same thing, across Google ads, across Facebook ads. I mean, any other ad platform runs into the same thing. It's a trend, right? It just, people continue to throw more money at it. It doesn't ever go down. It always goes up, right? And there's a cycle of competition, more sellers, more stupid money that gets thrown at it. Things becoming less efficient when you think that they should be becoming more efficient. Again, it's kind of like a stock market. Stock market goes up and down frequently because of the sentiment of the community and the investors. The same thing happens with sellers and some of the decisions they make, and they choose to be more aggressive in their advertising, or even worse is they hand it off to somebody and turn a blind eye and just hope for the best and cross their fingers behind their back that it's being managed correctly. And,
You made a very great point, Brian. I think going back to the days of media buying on Google when it was so ridiculously cheap because nobody was doing it. And then same thing with Facebook ads. It was so ridiculously cheap in the beginning because nobody was doing it. Same thing with all of the different ad types on Amazon. Sponsored display, the cost or clicks are down because not everybody is doing that. So I mean, it's the same evolution that's happened in all different platforms as long as advertising's been around.
yeah, I mean, and that's, yeah, and we're paying attention to that. We're also looking to see what are some of the best things that we hear, because I have connections within most of the high level masterminds that are out there. I'm sure, Anthony, you probably do too. Matt, I'm sure you're integrated as well in some of those. And you know, a lot of the common discussions is, okay, what's the next thing that we're working on? Some of those are gray hats, some of those are black hats, some of those are you know, above board within terms of service, but there is certainly, it's about finding the balance. It's about driving some of your own traffic, you know, from off Amazon to Amazon. Of course, it's never, there's no one magic bullet. It's kind of frustrating when I see where, you know, I actually had a conversation earlier this week where somebody was saying like, well, I need to spend more time. We're committing a certain amount of time and money in order to develop our, in this case, it was our business to business, you know, the sales for our business, the B2B customers, right? And my comment was like that's 2% of your sales. That's kind of like focusing all your time on your A+ content that gets 20% of your audience. You only have so much time, so many resources to commit, and you really need to focus on where those are. And sometimes if you don't have that level of expertise, you need to find somebody who does that, have that specific level of expertise that you can have a consistent recurring conversation with to make sure that it's being managed according to how you want to run your business, and then focus your attention on the other areas where your superpowers might be, whether it's product sourcing, talking to the, you know, engaging your community. These kinds of things definitely will pay off for your brand. Some of the mechanical things of selling on Amazon, frankly, probably not your best, probably not your superpower.
I would like to interject here. I do think that it's probably a little bit of like fear-based messaging when I hear one day sponsored product ads are just not going to be profitable. I don't personally think that we're going to see that day happen. However, if all the data is consistent, we're seeing a cost increase across the board, and we're actually pulling that data too. We're working with data analysts to we're going to have this. We're going to be able to say definitively whether we've seen it from our perspective as an agency as well. And I can't wait for that data to come out because I think it's going to inform a lot. But regardless of whether or not a cost is actually increasing, I think this is a good indicator that right now, if we're looking at undervalued real estate, DSP is, I know it's not for everybody. I know that because it requires a larger ad spend, not every business is at a place where they can run DSP. But if anybody's caught the article that I wrote about first party data and DSP, one of the things I mentioned in there, I referenced market research company that actually did interviews with a whole bunch of really seasoned media buyers, right? I mean, these are like big dogs, 15 plus years in the industry, and they all admitted that there was another survey done, and a bunch of those guys admitted that DSP accounted for like their third best ROI, but this one admitted that DSP, Amazon DSP specifically, accounted for their second biggest ROI, right underneath Google Ads. So it is a contender for second place with Facebook right now, right under Google Ads. And I think that is huge. I think that shows us right now, like everybody's putting aside bigger budgets for DSP. You know, big brands are just now catching on that, hey, we should probably put more money into this. So one day, DSP ads are also going to become very expensive, but right now they are absolutely not. It is undervalued real estate, and I think our biggest opportunity for probably the next couple of years is going to be a DSP. That's just my thoughts.
Yeah, let me ask you a question on that. So, Anthony, is that article, does that also up on the blog, up on Canopy Management?
Yeah, well, the article that I wrote about first party data that references that survey, yes, that article is also on our blog.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Do we have anything else we want to add as far as the discussions away from the crowds? I know we've kind of interjected that throughout, this whole call, but is there anything else we want to add on to that before we move on to our last slide? Nope. Okay, cool. All right, let me go ahead and jump in. Actually, let me do one thing just so that we don't wrap it up at the end here. So again, this is the link that I was referring to earlier as far as like if you did want to have a conversation with our team, agency team over at Canopy Management, just go out to canopymanagement.com and you can, or you can go to webinar -offer. I'm sure we can probably put that link into the chat here as well. Let me actually do that really quick. And then just have that conversation with our team. Again, we are not the high pressure kind of agency. What we will do is we'll tell you what we think, in our opinion, what you're doing correctly, what you're doing incorrectly. If you want to work with us to solve that, awesome. If you choose to take it off and do it yourself, cool too. Just so long as you're taking action. All right, let me go ahead and jump back here. Talking about as far as like some of the actionable steps for Amazon sellers. What are some of the nuggets that you picked up as far as the hacks and some of the gems that you pulled out of some of these discussions, Anthony, that you saw from the stage?
Okay, so I've already mentioned the one about translations. That was really poignant. Another one that I promised that I would bring up that somebody brought up regarding how to get Seller Central support to be better. Because it kind of sucks. This is one of those things that like the bigger sellers know about. They don't share with everybody. It was shared from the stage to a very small group at Prosper, and I'm about to share it to this small group. It's obviously going to spread, and it's not going to work in a couple of years. But for right now, whenever you're having a problem with Amazon seller support, 9 times out of 10 it can be solved by the captive team, but you can't ask for the captive team. They will not send you to the captive team if you ask for it. What you have to do is during regular business hours, ask for the Spanish speaking team. They're going to then translate you to Costa Rica, which is one of the captive teams. So that's your hack right there for greater seller support. Ask for the Spanish. They'll answer and they'll be like speaking to you in Spanish. All you have to do is just start talking in English and they'll be like, oh, okay, because they can speak English too. That is one of the captive teams. Your results you'll be phenomenally amazed at how different the results are once you talk to Costa Rica.
Yeah, because you're kind of backdooring the process. You're not getting filtered out before you even get to the people you need to talk to.
That's right. So beyond that, I know this slide mentions a hack contest. It wasn't our hack contest. It was a hack contest that I got pulled up on stage and I tied with Bradley Sutton for number 1. I'll give you both of our hacks. Bradley's was specifically about regarding his Maldives honeymoon. So essentially what that is for anybody that's not familiar, he uses helium 10 obviously to find he uses helium 10 obviously to find listings that, okay, so you take your main keyword and then you kind of expand it a little bit into a super relevant, decent volume, longer tail, right? So you're looking at, maybe 3 to 4 words, something around maybe over 1,000 searches a month still. And you take that and then you look and see if you can find a highly relevant phrase of that size that only 5 or less of your competitors have intact, the phrase intact in their title. That right there, if you then put it in your title, you should rank for that keyword page 1 immediately because you're only competing with like 5 or less other people. Right. So I thought that was really cool. And he calls that the Maldives honeymoon period because then it also becomes like super easy to rank for keywords that kind of root out from that phrase.
So it's almost like
highly relevant.
So it's almost like doing the opposite of what your competition is doing.
Exactly. And then the hack that I shared. So I've been doing some studies and tests on like other ways to rank. And one of the things that we used to do a lot of, and then it got bogged down by black hatters and Amazon changed some things and we kind of moved away from it. But it's been years and now I'm back into it. In the promotion settings in Seller Central, you can do something called a buy one, get one. Buy one, get ones. Whenever somebody takes advantage of that, BSR reflects the sale of 2 units. the unit session percentage reflects 200%. Right now, and I know this changes, it's cyclical, but right now, conversion rate is one of the most important factors that weight ranking. So if you have your search, find, buy, or your super URL campaign and you push it to a buy one, get one, that conversion rate is going to overall be huge and it'll be faster to rank. One of the plus sides is that this is a white hat, completely above board way to rank because you're not doing anything shady. You're literally just using one of their promotion strategies, promotion availabilities within Seller Central. The only downside is people who buy using that will not be able to leave a verified review. It is still considered unverified. It doesn't look like Amazon treats it as a 50% coupon, but it still treats it as a coupon. And the behavior is a little different. But so the ranking strategy, you just won't get reviews from. And yeah, those were the hacks. Now, as far as the actionable steps for Amazon sellers, my favorite session was this right here. And it was from Paul Barron. And it talks about utilizing nano influencers. And I really like to briefly just go over what his lessons were because it was phenomenal. Basically, he's been teaching about this nano influencer strategy for a couple of years now. But because he has a couple of years under his belt, he's recently able to survey all of they're called brand ambassadors. Because when it all started, he just created a post on Instagram and then boosted it as an ad. But now he's got these brand ambassadors and surveyed them and asked, like, what's the number one reason why you do what you do? The top two answers, they had a positive experience with the brand in the past, which means that they were buyers, or they were recruited by somebody, which means those buyers were bringing their friends. So armed with that knowledge, now he's saying the absolute best way for you to build an audience of brand ambassadors is in a post-purchase follow-up sequence, which he uses chatbots. I'm a big fan of chatbots. I think you should do that too. However you get the message out, though, if you can find a way to communicate with buyers post-purchase, this is huge. And the reason why is because why nano influencers are so powerful, these are regular people that are active on social media. These are people that are willing to take a picture with your product and post it to Instagram, but not charge you $1,000 because they're not a micro influencer. Most of these people only have 100, 200, 500 followers on Instagram. They're not trying to make money with brand deals. They just love your product. So what he does is he basically pays them, incentivizes it for a picture that he can then turn around and post anywhere from $10 to $100, which is really, really affordable, especially if you get a bunch of those $10 ones. These are so much more powerful than hiring an influencer that has 1 million followers. Somebody has 1 million followers. They do a lot of brand deals. Maybe 100,000 people see it. Maybe it resonates with 1,000 of them. Maybe you get 1 or 2 purchases. And then the campaign is over because it scrolls past. Whereas if you have an army of 1,000 people all sharing with their friends and family a picture of them using your product, and then you repost that on your own social media, the guy gets over 2,000 submissions of people using his products per month. Think about the kind of stuff you could do with that level of user-generated content. So that was my actionable step for Amazon sellers. It was a phenomenal session. For anybody that missed it, hopefully you can use that. There you go.
Right on. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, that is definitely something we talk more about with in the masterminds is really tapping into the micro influencers, really, and it's not as easy to do, but that is an opportunity for you, is that if you're willing to do a little bit more work than your competitors, you're going to have a significant competitive advantage, which has kind of been a common theme we've had here today. Was there anything else you wanted to add as far as the hacks, or can we kind of basically do a recap? We went way over what I was hoping to do, but
I told you we were going to. You were
you
like,
know
we
what?
get it done in an hour. It's like there's
my
no way
lips
we're
just
gonna
keep
get
moving,
it done.
So yeah, I get into this stuff pretty heavy. So
yeah, no, that was it on my end. As far as the best content I saw, if I missed anything, definitely go back to the blog because I go in a little more detail about all of this stuff. And then look, if anybody has any more questions, Canopy's Facebook page, pretty active in there. Post a question, or you can email Anthony Lee at canopymanagement.com. We can go over all of this stuff. Strategy is like my favorite thing in the world to talk about.
Cool. Very cool. Just kind of recapping some of the things. So as far as Prosper Show 2021, I would say it was definitely positive from a standpoint of bringing people back together post COVID. And fortunately, we didn't have that many infections that came out of it. So that was another good sign. What that probably means is you're going to get a lot more live in-person shows that are coming up this year. Most likely more regional shows that are less expensive for the promoters and maybe in your local area, whether that is, obviously there was definitely a need for a live show in Europe, for instance, because a lot of people couldn't make it over because of visas and issues like that. The aggregators are definitely throwing a lot of money. There's a lot of prospecting going out for brands that are ready for that. For those who are not ready for that, for to be acquired, you certainly can spend the next 1 to 2 years, maybe 5 years, whatever your plan is. If you do want to consider exiting at some point in the future, you definitely want to make sure that you are focused on the correct metrics, the correct numbers, so that you are prime, ready to go for when that day comes and you can get the most out of it. So that is definitely something that I would highly recommend. I know our team has that kind of conversation on a regular basis. For those of you who were not familiar with before, of course, one of the biggest messaging that we had as an agency, Canopy Management, we were talking primarily about our Canopy Accelerator program. We don't accept everybody. We do qualify. In fact, I think we turn away more people than we actually accept into the program. But we focus primarily on increasing conversion rate through proper listing optimization and differentiation, followed by native Amazon PPC advertising, then followed by off Amazon retargeting like DSP advertising, for instance. And that helps us to have the phenomenal track record that we've been able to demonstrate that levels up brands and gets them to the point where we've literally had some of those brands exit because they have been purchased. We got them so juicy that they actually got purchased by an aggregator or an investor. We did talk about how some of the investment money that started to creep into the area is not smart money. They're not operators. They don't have all the skill sets they need. And so we that is probably driving up some of the costs and some of the inefficiencies that we're seeing on the platform. But I think that's more of a dent at this point. It'll probably get worse, in the next year. As far as driving up ad costs, we talked about how some of the ad costs are driven up not just by aggregators, but also seasonality and also simply just panic by sellers who weren't familiar with this kind of COVID and post-COVID variations in the amount of shopper traffic that's coming on Amazon. And so they're panicking because their sales, they're perceiving it as a problem that they have uniquely, when in fact it's a platform-wide problem as far as traffic down, sales are down, and they try to compensate by over advertising, which of course drives up ad costs as well. So my recommendation, go back to, to that listing optimization, reboot your main image, your title, the rest of your images, your videos, up to 3 videos, especially. I've talked about that considerably. And the bullet points, of course, to make sure that you're speaking directly to the benefit. What's in it for me as a shopper if I buy your product? Obviously, Anthony, you brought up a couple of great hacks. We saw, you can go back and watch the replay that we send out over the next couple of days if you want to recatch, some of those points. And then, of course, some of the things that we saw as far as like either gaps in the space or those that were probably the gaps primarily had to do with along the logistics side, and obviously there is some common problems in the world when it comes to shipping logistics and freight forwarding and inspection and customs and all these kinds of things that have not been resolved, and we don't expect them to be resolved within the next 6 months. I think there's definitely going to be backlog at the ports, for instance, for quite a while. And so some of the suggestions we had were look at alternatives, look domestically for any kind of manufacturing. EU may have dismissed domestic manufacturing because it was too expensive before. But if you think about the time and the money investment that you'd have to do now in order to get it from overseas, you actually may balance out and find out, wow, I can actually get my product sourced domestically from whatever country you're selling into and wherever you're based. It may actually make sense now compared to, especially the time cost is just massive. You know, when you're talking about 1 to 3 months just to get it checked in, you know, get it through the ocean ports. And then in some of the warehouses like Ontario, California, where you could ship in a small amount of units and it takes a month and a half for them to actually check it in and get it live. It's just, and they're really inconsistent as far as where that happens. And so you've got to get a little bit more creative. You've got to test out other warehouses that you ship to. You've got to test out other ports, maybe that you normally have things shipped to. You may want to start having conversations this year with manufacturers that are outside of what you've established already. They're outside of China, for instance. Look at other, not only other countries. I think one of the attendees to the show said, you know, we're talking about Vietnam. They said, yeah, you know, I use Vietnam, but even they're getting backlogged now because of, you know, apparently everybody else is getting the same idea as well. So remember, don't forget that there are domestic manufacturers probably for your product that are going to be expensive in comparison as for the manufacturing cost, but extremely cheap when it comes to the shipping and logistics and the time loss. Definitely revisit that as a worst case scenario. It's your backup solution for the next year until things go back to normal. Matt, Anthony, what else would you like to add?
You covered up. Good rundown.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that was a fantastic rundown. That was a super fun conversation. I want to say thank you both for joining me in it because, you know, I was recapping some fond memories that I had.
Yeah.
Also, for anybody, we didn't touch on this, but for anybody that's curious, the DJs in Vegas are awesome, but super loud. And I just regained hearing like
even the restaurants were
a
loud.
day ago. I know, right? Like it was nuts.
Yeah.
They had live singers, and I mean, that's cool, but
yeah, it's
geez,
definitely
man,
Vegas.
You can't, that's why I don't have a voice because I had to yell everywhere we went.
I'm not a fan of Vegas really, but at the same time, it's an energy that usually it burns you out in about 3 or 4 days. So, but anyway, so yeah, so I definitely look forward to, do me a favor. If you're watching this, or if you're on the call today, or if you're watching the replay, make sure you message us and let us know of any other conferences that you're thinking about going to, so that, you know, if we happen to be going to those as well, that we get a chance to meet up and say hello in person and shake your hand. Because that was 90% of the reason why Vegas was so enjoyable for Prosper for me, is getting those, you know, the hand touch kind of, you know, meetings and relationships was fantastic. The face to
Not
face.
just in the community as a whole, but people that we work with, people that we see. I see these guys on Zoom calls every day, and seeing them in person is just so much different, having that face to face interaction. So it was good.
I know.
To do that again.
It was so nice to meet you, Matt.
Yeah. I know. We talk all the time, but it's so nice to meet you.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody else who joined in here. Again, don't forget that check out Anthony's blog posts up on canopymanagement.com. He goes into even more detail about some of the hacks that he learned and some of the conversations and trends that we are seeing. That is some great information to follow up today's discussion. So thank you, everybody. Again, appreciate you being here. Gentlemen, I appreciate you all joining in here. It was awesome. I enjoyed it. I look forward to the next one.
You too.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody.